My name is John Arul Phillips. I'm the Dean, School of Education and Cognitive Science, Asia University, Malaysia. The title of my paper is Changing Profile and Expectations of New Generation Learners. In a roundtable meeting of Vice Chancellors of Commonwealth Open Universities in Asia and Africa in 2019, identified 7 challenges that open universities face in the 21st century. First was the changing profile of learners. Second, learner support. Third, harnessing technology. And fourth, staff development. Fifth, skills development and employability. 6, assessment of competencies. And 7, quality assurance. For purposes of this paper, we will focus on the first challenge, that is, changing profile of learners. For a long time, the demographics of students in the open universities were essentially mature working adults. However, of late, this is changing with more younger working adults entering higher education and in open universities. Now, this group of learners have been given names like new generation learners, next generation learners, and so forth. They consist of different age groups, but they share a common experience. One group grew with the internet and all the technologies. And the other group, a younger group, was born into the internet and all the technologies. The new generation learners have leveraged on the learning revolution, which is described as a convergence of the internet, digital content, communication tools consisting of social media and video conferencing tools, and the variety of devices that these generation of learners use. Now, they are not your typical learners. They are a generation that is fascinated with technologies, constantly searching, receiving feedback, and sharing information on the web. And they've also been described as the C generation, who are always connected to the web, who consume a lot of web resources, who create web resources, and also curate web resources. And they make decisions relying on online resources, and the decisions cut across many facets of their lives. They are supposed to be accustomed to multitasking, though some learning scientists disagree with the idea of being able to multitask. YouTube, interestingly, and Google have become their auxiliary memory, or in other words, an extension of their long-term memory, and is something on the go, especially if they have the smartphone with them. And they've been described as device agnostic. In other words, they use a range of devices from desktop, laptop, tablet, down to the smartphone. Now, these not your typical learners engage with videos and audio clips. And they've also been described as the YouTube generation. They are videographers on the go, especially those who have smartphones. They use social media extensively and intensively with friends from all over the world. And interestingly, they've been described as futuristic, optimistic, and even risk takers. And they've been described also as people who thrive on challenging work and creative expression. For these learners, Technology is not a tool anymore, but an integral part of their lives, and they cannot imagine not being connected to the web. For example, a mother asked her daughter, "How was school?" The girl replied, "The internet is slow." And interestingly, it was her first day in kindergarten. However, there is a word of caution with these new generation learners, because the kinds of technologies and that they have been accustomed to when does not necessarily transfer to the learning environment, the kinds of tools and technologies used in the learning environment. For example, the kind of using the learning management system, the interaction between learner and content, interaction between learner and the tutor or the teacher, interaction between the learner among themselves on academic content. Hence, in our experiences, we have realized that they need orientation towards using educational technology, especially in the area of online learning. Now, what do these new generation learners expect from their learning journey? This is interesting. They want to know why. They want to know context. They want to know why they are learning something. They want to see it applied in the real world. They want to work within authentic situations. And they want to practice real world tools because they're very keen on acquiring practical skills. And in our experiences, we have realized that the content for this new generation learners has got to be made simple but not simpler. This is subscribing to Einstein's adage, because these learners have been described as having short attention spans and wanting things now. And they want short bursts of information. And they want information broken down into manageable blocks, which is stackable, and meeting their immediate needs, especially meeting the needs of the workplace. They want learning just in time, and they desire work that impacts the world. Continuing with what they expect from their learning journey, they're not interested in sitting in rows as you would do in a lecture hall. They want hands-on, learning by doing. They prefer working in groups, and this is where collaborative learning is an important pedagogical strategy when dealing with the new generation learners. They want to engage with students not only in their immediate surroundings, but outside their own institution. Then they don't want to be passive learners. They want to be immersive, active, and involved. And interestingly, they want to learn by trial and error. They're willing to do trial and error, and they want to engage in innovative thinking. These learners also expect a sense of accomplishment. In other words, they want to know how they are faring. They want to be kind of rewarded. And that is why the concept of badges has been very popular in some institutions. They prefer information presented in videos and audio and less of text. And they want their prior experience and learning to be considered. And they want learning to be seamless. They want to re-enter the learning journey. And obviously, they would much prefer gamification and game-like content. And they expect immediate feedback on what they are learning. They also want structure in what they are learning, and they want to be clear where they are heading to. And they want multiple pathways along their learning journey. And in terms of assessment, They would prefer less reliance on the high-stakes, closed-book proctored exams, which many educational institutions are very accustomed to. And they look forward to alternative assessment methods. And and wherever possible, they want their assessment to be real-world and an authentic setting. Now, new generation learners present new challenges and opportunities to us as educators. They have strong opinions and preferences for how they learn. Now, educational institutions cannot be oblivious to what these new generation learners are entering our institutions, and we cannot continue to be doing the same thing. And I think John Dewey describes this very well when he says, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And interestingly, he said this in 1930, and it's still relevant today. Now, flexibility is the future of education. Flexibility that frees learners from the limitations of time, place, and pace of study. Flexibility that gives learners choice of pedagogical strategies, learning activities, assessment tasks, entry and exit points. Flexibility that facilitates learners to fill in the gap between the skills they have learned in educational institutions and the skills they need to succeed in the workplace. Because it has been found that many educational institutions are not agile enough in their curriculum, in their teaching methods, in meeting the needs of the workplace. So they want to fill that gap by taking courses outside their universities, prompting them to enroll in cutting-edge courses that are often lacking in higher education curricula. In a case of, just a case study, to cite a case study of Malaysia, the Malaysian Qualification Agency is the body that is involved in accreditation of programs in Malaysia, both undergraduate, diploma level, postgraduate, and masters and even PhDs. Now, they have introduced guidelines quite recently enabling the transfer of credits from MOOCs offered by any institution in the world to an accredited program in a Malaysian institution. In other words, you could take a course in marketing in an Australian university as a MOOC or a British university as a MOOC, and that can be transferred. The credits can be transferred to a program in Malaysia. The agency also encourages educational institutions to offer standalone courses which are called micro-credentials, and they can be of any sizes, meaning that it could be 1 credit, 2 credit, 3 credit, and so forth. And these can be accumulated and transferred to an accredited program in any Malaysian institution. And there is also flexibility in terms of entry, point of entry. In other words, like for a master or bachelor's program, the learner's prior knowledge, it can be taken into consideration, and together with the submission of a portfolio and the passing of an aptitude test, can be accepted into a master's or bachelor's program. In conclusion, for the most part of education worldwide, in-person or face-to-face teaching was the dominant mode of delivering education. Interestingly, it took a bug named COVID to bring about the realization among educators, students, parents, policyholders, and industry that there are other ways of delivering education, more flexible ways of delivering education. So we suddenly see a surge of educants forced to transition to the virtual space. And for many, it was the first experience at being flexible and providing learners with choice, what to learn, where to learn, when to learn, how to learn, and how to assess. A case in point would be suddenly the realization that we cannot have closed book exams, proctored exams in large halls. So what is the alternative for examinations? These are examples in which the pandemic has made us rethink and reimagine how we teach and how we assess and what we teach. It demonstrates that education can be flexible if institutions have the will and the way. And the pandemic has nudged educational institutions in responding to flexible modes of teaching and learning, leaving no choice but to reimagine and reinvent themselves so as not to be left behind. Thank you.